You're not going to be a dictator, are you? I said, no, 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 other than day one.
Donald Trump has successfully moved the Overton window in a way that is as dangerous for the future of democracy in this country as anything else.
This is what Vout and Project 2025 wanted.
Newsom is he's daring Tom Homan to come and arrest him. Should he do it? I would do it if I were Tom. I think it's great.
They control the Congress, they control the White House, and they control the courts. And so, of course, they're massively overreaching. And yes, they are getting away with it right now.
This is clearly a man who cannot tolerate criticism of him or what he does, which is exactly what authoritarianism is all about.
The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. They really are the enemy of the people.
What he is saying, rather bluntly, if you stand up to Donald Trump, he will punish you.
Protesters in Philadelphia, state capitals in California, Minnesota, Michigan, Texas, Wisconsin, Indiana, and others showed up to oppose Trump, Musk, and Project 2025.
The US and President Trump has overseen America's largest military parade in decades as nationwide protests take place against his leadership.
Demonstrations are happening right across the United States today to oppose the Trump administration.
Two visions of America. On a day the country's deepening divide was there for all the world to see.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Jeff Waldorf, and you're watching Logically Left right here, Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, all the usual suspects. All right, it is a new week, and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about, considering I was not here on Friday. And Friday, apparently some things went down, and over the weekend as well, including another mass shooting in this country, which shouldn't really be huge news, considering how we have mass shootings like literally all the time. But this one, like a lot of the shootings lately, have been politicized by the right wing, and so of course I must talk about this and debunk the bullshit, and actually talk about how this guy, the most recent mass shooter, apparently was a fan of President Donald Trump. Whether or not that had anything to do with the motive, we don't know. But again, that's just, that appears to be the reality here. Another Trump fan going crazy. Shocker. All right, we've got that. We've got a memo here that is pretty disastrous, pretty scary. That is basically their intent to criminalize the left. That's right. We have that. We have a MAGA lawmaker that is wanting the governor of California arrested for being mean. Not to him, but to Stephen Miller. Okay. Gee, there you go. And they say, why are you calling us fascists? That's so mean of you. You should, you know what? We should arrest you for calling me bad names. How very fascist of you. We have the energy department that is being run by a billionaire, or not billionaire, sorry, but somebody who is basically a shill for big oil, the big oil billionaires, and the donors, has decided to ban words. Like climate change and emissions. I'm going to talk about that. And, of course, a Republican gubernatorial candidate in Wisconsin has dropped out because of a little bit of hypocrisy, even though that's normally they don't really care about hypocrisy. So I'm going to tell you what it's actually about. But apparently he had been, looking at non-binary sex workers on Medium, which, again, I don't see the problem. Well, except for the fact that they're anti-LGBTQ. That is a problem. But looking at that stuff, I don't really care, but Republicans do. And so this guy thinks that's the reason I had to step down. Okay. So there's a lot of stuff, like I said, that I'm going to talk about today. Now, if you haven't already, please like and share the stream. With that said, I guess why don't we dive in? I'm going to start out with the mass shooter in my state of Michigan. Not good. There was another mass shooting in America, which I don't think surprises anyone. But over the weekend, a man identified as Thomas Jacob Sanford had attacked a Mormon church in Grand Blanc, Michigan. 4 people were killed, at least 8 were wounded. Authorities said that Sanford rammed his pickup truck into the church's front door. That, by the way, that pickup truck was adorned with American flags. And he did that before he started shooting, and then later on set the building on fire. So, I don't know. It seems kind of like this was personal, but I don't know. Responding police officers engaged Sanford in a firefight, and he was subsequently killed. Again, this is the latest example of violence, which is starting to leave people wondering what the hell is going on here. Does it feel like things have gotten more violent, or are we just paying more attention? I mean, that is the question, right? That said, people are drawing their own conclusions despite a lack of a known motive, and it's not like you're going to get it out of Sanford now. Speaking of that, look, Trump wrote on True Social that he believes that this is another targeted attack against Christians, which I think it's interesting to frame it that way, as there are some Christians on the right wing that actually don't consider Mormons to be part of the Christian faith, even though they do believe in Jesus, and the Moroni supposed to be Jesus reincarnated. It's Mormons. I mean, they got some strange beliefs, but no stranger, I think, in my opinion, than really any other mainstream religion. But anyway, yeah, they do believe in Jesus, and they do believe in God. So they would be technically of the Christian faith, I would believe. But anyway, here's what Trump said on True Social. This appears to be yet another targeted attack on Christians in the United States of America. The Trump administration will keep the public posted, as we always do. In the meantime, pray for the victims and their families. This epidemic of violence in our country must end immediately. Hey, look, I agree. Yes, the epidemic of violence must end. Oh, I do agree with that. But the funny thing is that this comes from a man who continues to stoke the fires of violence, the flames of violence, while wondering why everything seems to be catching on fire these days. That said, while we do not know a motive in this particular case, there were signs. And I'm saying literal signs of what he apparently believed. As you can see, this is a Trump sign. Yeah, okay. Outside of the suspect's home on the 4100 block of East Atherton Road in Burton, which is about 15 minutes away by a car, obviously, or truck, from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Grand Blanc Township, where he committed this horrific act. So, naturally, people saw that and were like, I don't know, maybe he might be a MAGA guy. It is very possible. Republicans, of course, look at the placement of that sign, and it was like, aha! You see, it was above stop sign, which means he wanted to actually stop Trump. What are you talking about? What? Huh? I mean, that's a stretch. I mean, to me, it feels like big time cope, because there is a sign, a literal Trump sign, but they're like, yeah, you see, it's above stop sign, so stop Trump. No, that placement would actually spell out Trump stop, not stop Trump. It wouldn't make a whole lot of sense. Okay. All right. Sure. But no, there's more. You have this. Notice the shirt. Sanford, back in 2019, wearing a Trump Make Liberals Cry Again shirt. Yeah. So, yeah, but you know, false flag. 6 years in the making to make Donald Trump look bad. Cope. Total cope and seethe. Okay. Look, what about his voting records? Records do show that Sanford had no recorded party affiliation, but that is because Michigan has an open primary system, so you don't have to register with a party. Okay. So, now that said, Sanford did sign some petitions that may have offered more clues into his political leanings. In 2021, for example, he signed an Unlock Michigan petition, which would have repealed Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer's pandemic emergency powers. Oh, okay. So that was pushed by Republicans in Michigan. And then there was a 2020 push by Right to Life Michigan to outlaw an abortion procedure. Okay. And there you go. It seems pretty clear what side of the aisle this gentleman belonged to. Okay. But that said, that doesn't exactly give you a motive here. There are plenty of Trump supporters that haven't done any violence, that don't go and shoot up churches. Okay. And the question is, why attack the Mormons? The Mormons didn't really, the Mormons don't really do a whole lot that's apparently objectionable to other right-wingers. I don't know. To me, this doesn't seem like it's political violence. Okay? It's not like MAGA hates the Mormons. You know, there are some weirdos on the right that are like, they're not actual real Christians. Okay, but that's a minority of a minority, right? No, what I'm going to guess, and I'm not basing this on any information that I have or anything, but it feels like that this would be personal, okay? This guy, who was a veteran that served in Iraq, maybe he wanted to go out in a so-called blaze of glory and chose a place that was not only nearby, but was filled with people that maybe he could take with him. I don't know for certain. We will have to wait for more real details to come out. That said, that didn't stop MAGA from immediately putting the blame on the left. Of course. Starting with Laura Loomer, who wrote, hate against Christians is widespread in places like Michigan because the entire state is being taken over by Muslims who refuse to assimilate. Okay. Again, that's crap. I live in the state of Michigan. I would know if my entire state was being taken over by Islam. Okay? It's not. Less than 3% of the population of the state identify as Muslim. And there's absolutely no evidence that shooter is Muslim. But he has a beard. Oh, facts, man. They don't stop people like Laura Loomer. Oh, no.
Just forget about the evidence.
As always. Now, she continues. The Democrats in Michigan are running a Muslim for Senate in 2026 named Abdul El-Sayed. He is openly tied to the Muslim Brotherhood and refused to condemn Sharia law. Oh, my God. Sharia law. What's Sharia? Where's this Sharia law that I keep reading about? I don't know. I don't understand. When I confronted him on video in 2018 when he was running for governor, be aware, Michigan, only you can stop the Islamic invasion of your state before it becomes uninhabitable for Christians and Jews. For one, the shooter was a white guy with MAGA merch and a MAGA sign. That doesn't sound like your average Islamic extremist. Maybe an extremist in another way, but come on. And look, I personally met Abdul El-Sayed at least a couple times. Okay. One of them, I just randomly bumped into him when I was in Detroit. Super nice guy. I don't think he's planning to, take over the state and institute Sharia law. Okay. That doesn't make any sense. But this idea, though, that Christianity itself is under attack is absolutely ridiculous. And notice, by the way, I was reading the story earlier today, and I was thinking, wait a minute. So this proves that there is an attack on Christianity. But did they say the same thing when Dylan Roof attacked a church, okay, and killed 9 people? No, they didn't. What was the difference there? Does anybody know what the difference there between this church and that church was, or that shooting? They were both white guys with guns. Okay, that's a thing. What was the difference here? What was the difference? Oh, I know. The church in the Emmanuel AME Church actually had a primarily black delegation. Oh, and the motive for that was of course, racism, right? Which it doesn't seem to be the case here. Okay, but on that, so attack a black church, and that's not an attack on Christianity, because there was nobody on the right wing that was like, this is Dylan Roof attacked Christianity. How dare he? But on this one, this one counts as an attack on Christianity, where a white MAGA guy attacks a Mormon church. That's the attack on Christianity. Yeah, I don't know. It gets dumber, though, obviously. Another MAGA supporter wrote on X, this is a Mormon church coincidence. Mere weeks after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Tyler Robinson, raised in a Mormon home, gunned him down. Attackers now attack a Mormon church in Michigan, leaving multiple shot. Okay, deep ties to the trans cult or something darker at play. Democrats. What? What is that? That doesn't make any sense. Look, it either comes down to them for Muslims, trans people, or anyone on the left. Minorities, basically. They're targeting minorities. And again, in larger part, they're targeting the left, who are trying to protect the minorities that constantly get attacked and blamed for the political violence that they are receiving, not enacting. The vast majority, the overwhelming majority of mass shooters are actually cis white men. So, I mean, I'm just saying that's the reality here. But all of this shows you that there's a lot of people who don't live in reality anymore. Maybe they never have. Okay. Moving on. All right, here we go. Another day, another Republican who fails to understand what the First Amendment actually means. What do I mean? Well, you have Representative Derek Van Orden from Wisconsin, who now wants the governor of California arrested for saying mean things about Stephen Miller. Yeah. Governor Gavin Newsom's press office posted that Stephen Miller is a fascist on X on Friday. That post gathered over 24 million views as of Sunday night. So it's quite a hit. And some people were raging over it. For example, Representative Nancy Mace labeled the post as violent rhetoric. How? I don't know. While Van Orden went a step further, calling this domestic terrorism. He said at this point, this reaches the threshold of domestic terrorism. This is no longer inflammatory, it is criminal. No one is above the law, except for Trump, and the Supreme Court made sure of that one. But hold on, is this criminal? Van Orden seems to believe so. He cited 18 U.S. Code 2331, which notes that the term domestic terrorism means activities that appear to be intended to influence the policy of a government by intimidation or coercion. What that? I mean, this doesn't seem to fit any of this, does it? I mean, calling Stephen Miller a fascist doesn't really fit the definition of domestic terrorism, does it? No. That is some bullshit. And look, it's especially how considering that Miller himself has frequently called things and people fascists, so wouldn't he be a domestic terrorist as well? See, that's what one of the problems here, okay, with this whole thing. And there are many problems here. Now, here's what he said in April of 2022. If the idea of free speech enrages you, the cornerstone of democratic self-government, then I regret to inform you that you are fascist. Okay. I kind of agree with that, which is why it's extra ironic that the right wing is now cracking down on free speech. If you call them fascist, apparently you are committing domestic terrorism or something. Are you serious? Apparently they are. But there's more, by the way. In March of 2024, Miller wrote that the Democratic Party is now a fascist party using corporate and government power to punish dissent and dissenters. Yeah, okay, yep. Just like, they were the ones that tried to get the FCC to fire Jimmy Kimmel. Oh, wait, no, that was Republicans. That was Brendan Carr, who is a Project 2025 contributor and is now head of the FCC. Remember, he told ABC that we could do this the easy way or the hard way. His demand was that ABC remove Jimmy Kimmel's show, which they did for a short time. And look, the reason that Nexstar did this is because they wanted a merger, okay? Now, a merger's got to go through the FCC. And so, yeah, they were going to sacrifice Jimmy Kimmel, okay, in order to get their merger, which would have been worth billions of dollars. And so, it was only due to massive consumer backlash that Jimmy Kimmel ended up getting reinstated. And so, based on that logic, then, would that be fascist? Would it be you guys that are the fascists? I mean, here we have Derek Van Orden calling to crack down on the free speech of the governor of California for saying mean things about Stephen Miller. Tell me again who the fascists are. Just tell me again. Okay. Now, just saying. Despite the threats, though, Newsom's press office didn't back down, and I like that because, here we have some Democratic staffers that are showing some spine, a little bit of backbone here. That's nice. In fact, they posted this. Ding dongs in the White House. If you don't want us to call you a fascist, then stop doing fascist things. What fascist things, you may ask? We're not doing fascist things. Really? Sending the military into American cities for absolutely no reason? They're going to try to target Portland, Oregon. Okay, that's the next city. And then Chicago, D.C., L.A. And then, of course, you also are trying to curtail the First Amendment. Seems kind of fashy, right? But look, here's the thing. The right wing has completely diluted the meaning of the word fascist, right? And so not everybody knows what that is. They keep using the word. So I want to give you some key characteristics of fascism, and then let's see what fits, right? Now, one of the key characteristics is authoritarian and totalitarian rule, where they centralize power into a single leader or a small group of elites with no room for political dissent. Well, is Trump trying to do that? Well, yeah, trying to. He's trying to centralize power through executive orders, trying to appoint his people to the Federal Reserve to eliminate their quasi-independence. He's got the Supreme Court that rubber stamps everything that he does, comes to his rescue. Congress, Republicans in Congress are too afraid to stand against him. Okay, while Democrats continue to send strongly worded letters. And so, Yeah, he's trying to centralize power. That doesn't mean he's been entirely successful, but he hasn't been unsuccessful either at trying to consolidate power. What about militarism and nationalism? That's the next characteristic. Well, the ideology aggressively promotes national pride and identity, often through militaristic displays and contempt for other nations. Oh, that's brilliant. Right there. Okay. Trump's military parade's a good example of that. His open contempt for other countries like China. Okay. And actually going after Brazil for actually pursuing legal a legal remedy against their previous president who had plotted a coup and had failed at doing so. But we're going after Brazil for that. Okay, trying to put tariffs on them. So yeah, that's another thing. Nationalism right there. The rejection of liberal democracy and human rights is another characteristic. Fascism, of course, rejects democratic processes and individual rights in favor of the interests of the state. I mean, see Dark Enlightenment, Project 2025. Look, Dark Enlightenment, by the way, Curtis Yarvin, they've said, and Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance are adherents to this, okay, to many of the points of this Dark Enlightenment, right, which says that democracy is incompatible with capitalism. So Peter Thiel himself had said that. And so, yeah, that's one of those things that they're trying to do to turn the country into basically a bunch of corporate districts run by a CEO, okay, where people can vote with their feet and run to a different district. Instead, if you don't like the Amazon district, you can go to the McDonald's district. I mean, I don't know about you, but that sounds pretty goddamn dystopian to me. But anyway, there's more cult of the leader is another characteristic of fascism, where the leader is portrayed as a heroic and infallible figure who embodies the nation's will and destiny. I think that one's a given. I'm just saying. Controlled economy is another characteristic. While there is some private ownership, the state exercises significant control over economic activity to serve the nation's goals. Again, you do have some examples of that. For example, the deals that this administration has made that gets them cuts of their profit. So I believe the chip manufacturers, and then, you got the tariffs and that, which again are not paid for by the other countries. It's paid for by us. It's a tax on imported goods. And so, it's okay. There's some of that. Emphasis on hierarchy, promoting a belief in natural social hierarchies, where elites are destined to rule and individuals' interests are secondary to the nation's. Again, that kind of fits. Scapegoating and persecution of minorities, that definitely fits. Fascist movements often identify enemies within society, like, trans people on the left, and use scapegoating and violence to create a sense of national unity. Yeah. And usage of propaganda, using mass media to promote their agenda, glorify violence, and undermine factual truth. Again, that's a given. A lot of those seem to apply here with the Trump administration. If there's one thing I've learned about the people like Van Orden, is that they tend to accuse others of doing the very things that they themselves are doing. What is that phrase? Every accusation is a confession. All right. Speaking of that, let's do it. Let's go into how they're going to try to crush the left. Oh. Happy Monday, everybody. Oh, God. Last week, President Donald Trump basically declared war on anyone who criticizes him. What do I mean? On Thursday, the president signed the National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, or NSPM 7. The directive, titled Countering Domestic Terrorism and Organized Political Violence, focuses exclusively on anti-fascist or left-wing activities and mandates a national strategy to investigate and disrupt networks, entities, and organizations that foment political violence so that law enforcement can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. So this was caught by journalist Ken Klippenstein. He reported on this Saturday and was like, hey, this seems to not be widely reported, and I'm trying to figure out why. Here's what he wrote. I don't want to sound hyperbolic, but the plain truth is that NSPM-7 is a declaration of war on anyone who does not support the Trump administration and its agenda. Yeah, I mean, those are, it's not good. Not good at all. And there's a lot of problems with the contents of this memo. For example, they're basically admitting that they're targeting pre-crime. I mean, think of Minority Report, okay? Another issue is that they're casting a very wide net in targeting their groups, individuals, funders, and entities, okay, that supposedly foment violent political acts, while listing several protected beliefs as indicia of extremism. Now, what particular beliefs? Well, they say, and again, a lot of these are very vague, but one of them apparently is anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, which, by the way, they're not including the January 6ers in that, extremism on migration, race, and gender, again, vague, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. All of this is set up in a very explicit way with the vagueness to target people on the left. So if you're critical of capitalism, then, well, you're a target. If you're critical of fundamentalist evangelical Christianity, then you're a target. If you believe in transgender rights or gay rights, you're a target. They're basically coming after everyone who is not a straight white Christian Trump-supporting Republican. That's the reality here. And it's not just hypothetical. The memorandum entrusts enforcement of this to the FBI's over 4,000 strong Joint Terrorism Task Force, which removes legal challenges to directing the National Guard or other military forces to come in and crush domestic dissent. Wow. Klippenstein wrote that for the Trump White House, the beauty of using an already existing network is that it bypasses congressional oversight and scrutiny and even obscures federal activity to governors and legislatures at the state level. Targeted activities, as I mentioned, are also pretty broad, just like the criteria there. And they listed things like swatting, rioting, looting, trespass, assault, destruction of property, threat of violence, and civil disorder. And they brand them as domestic terrorist acts, which they are not. This also targets any individual or group who might fund activity the administration says is terrorism, and directs the IRS to, quote, take action to ensure that no tax-exempt entities are directly or indirectly financing political violence or domestic terrorism, which, again, broadly defined. They're targeting nonprofits, okay? And as Drop Site News pointed out in their reporting of this, the memo authorizes the Attorney General to designate domestic groups as terrorist organizations for the first time in American history. By targeting beliefs and protest activity, the directive positions dissent itself as a potential crime. This is bad. This is real bad. Okay? They basically want to criminalize all political opposition using these very flimsy excuses of, oh, it's the left that is dangerous and violent. They're all terrorists. No, that assertion is not based on reality whatsoever. In fact, according to data from the National Institute of Justice, right-wing violence actually led to about 520 deaths since 1990, compared to around 78 deaths due to left-wing violence. That report, you can't find it anymore, okay? Because it was removed. It was censored by this administration shortly after Charlie Kirk was killed. And they did so because it counters the narrative that they are desperate to create. That is the left wing that is wholly violent and unstable, and they're the cause of all of our problems. No. Look, this memo is really bad. Okay, but you know, and will lead to a lot of bad things. But just like a lot of the bad things happening now, it didn't just happen on its own. As Klippenstein points out, that there were previous administrations that had opened this door. And Trump is just, like he does with all the previous doors that were opened, he's rushing through, and basically, he is the bull in the china shop now. As Klippenstein explains, a pre-crime endeavor, preventing attacks before they happen, was actually core to the post-9/11 concept of counterterrorism itself. No longer satisfied to investigate acts of terrorism after the fact to bring terrorists to justice, the Bush administration adopted preemption. Overseas, that led to aerial assassinations by drone and special operations kill missions. Domestically, it has led to counterterrorism campaigns whose hallmark was excessive and illegal government surveillance, for example, of Muslims in New York City, and use of undercover agents and confidential human sources to trap and entrap would-be terrorists. The irony is that now the Republicans are looking to claim that that's what happened on January 6th, by the way. Again, ironies upon ironies, right? Now, he writes that now with Donald Trump's directive retooling the counterterror apparatus to go after Americans at home, I mean, when he said he's going to go after the homegrowns next, he wasn't kidding. This means monitoring political activity or speech as an investigative method to discover radicalism. Nowhere in this memo do they mention that, yes, Americans have protection on our First Amendment rights to protest, to organize. And you know why? Because they don't want you to have those rights. They don't want you to do those things. And look, Stephen Miller, who's the White House Deputy Chief of Staff, he's already trying to make use of this document. In fact, he wrote on social media on Friday, "We are witnessing domestic terrorist sedition against the federal government. The JTTF has been dispatched by the Attorney General. Pursuant to NSPM-7, all necessary resources will be utilized." So there you go. This right here, it is meant to chill free speech, to stop peaceful political protest, and to allow them to come after any group, any nonprofit that is fighting in the courts and in the media, okay, to protect people's civil rights. They're going after those people. This is what we're up against, folks. This is what we're up against. It is a targeted assault on the rights of all American citizens, using the tools that were granted by previous administrations to go after foreign terror cells. Look, this is much, much worse than having to take off your shoes to get into an airplane. This is clearly a war against freedom. All right. Let's move on here and go to what they're doing. More PC police. Okay. The Trump Department of Energy's PC police are continuing their war on words by adding climate change, green, and decarbonization to the growing list of words that they cannot say at the, get this, Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy. Yeah. It's according to an email issued Friday and obtained by Politico. Now, obviously, that's kind of ironic here, as those things are at the heart of that particular department's mission. But apparently, you can't say that. Can't say these words. Look, the department is the government's largest investor in technologies that could help reduce emissions that cause climate change, as well as, reduce pollution. But apparently, you cannot mention that solution or even the problems. In fact, here's a letter from, or I should say, the directive from Acting Director of External Affairs, Rachel Overbay, saying, please ensure that every member of your team is aware that this is the latest list of words to avoid, and continue to be conscientious about avoiding any terminology that you know to be misaligned with this administration's perspectives and priorities. Those instructions apply to both public-facing and internal communications and cover documents, such as requests for information, for federal funding opportunities, reports, and briefings. So basically, they are being told to pretend that climate change does not exist, even though it does, whether you believe it or not, it's real. In addition to both climate change and green, the EERE forbid officials from using emissions to avoid the implication that they are a negative. Ooh, no, that sounds too negative when you call them emissions. Then what are we supposed to call them? Well, you're not supposed to talk about them at all. Oh, right. Other terms that are banned include energy transition. Maybe because it has a word transition in it. I don't know. Sustainability or sustainable. Clean or dirty energy. Wait a minute. Hold on.
Clean coal, meaning they're taking out coal, they're going to clean it.
Oops. And carbon/CO2 footprint, and tax breaks, tax credits, and subsidies. Wow, there it is. Here we have the freedom of speech government literally banning words that Trump and the oil industry, more importantly, doesn't like. Okay? Remember, that they got a stooge in there that is running this department. That fossil fuel industry has known for decades at least that their business model is driving climate change. And that's why they don't want you to talk about it. In fact, Energy Secretary Chris Wright has also sought to impugn climate science by touting a report that he had commissioned downplaying the role of rising emissions and their effect in worsening weather extremes. He has endorsed some of the report's most controversial findings, such as claiming that the report or that the potential benefits of a warmer planet are undervalued. Undervalued. Yes, the benefits, you see, of places in the world being rendered uninhabitable for human beings. What benefit? What benefit? And again, I find some irony in this, right? Right now, the MAGA movement is, one of their main goals is to try to stop immigration, right? Wouldn't it make sense then to ensure that people don't have to leave their homes because of droughts, flooding, massive storms, temperatures that are too high for people to grow food or even go outside? Wouldn't that make sense? That's what's happening in certain areas of the world right now. And that partly what will drive and what is driving migration right now. So the only theory that I can come up with is, that kind of squares that, is they actually do want more migration. What? The Trump administration wants more migration? Yes. Because the more people that come in or try to come in, I mean, the more people that do that, the more they can fearmonger about them. Every time an election comes around, they'll be able to whip up their base with fears of another migrant caravan. It's worked very, very well for them in elections. I mean, it's worked so well that Trump managed to get Latinos to vote against immigration. Okay, that's how successful Republicans have been on messaging and how dismal Democrats have been. And by the way, on obstruction, they've also been very, very successful. Remember, Democrats kept trying to push immigration reform. This was back in, 2013, 2014-ish, right? And one of the things that they tried to do is to make our system a little bit more streamlined, a little better, reduce waiting times, because waiting times are insane. And they also wanted to do more checks to make sure that criminals didn't come in. That's because that's how the Democrats roll, right? Now, what happened? Well, Republicans blocked it every single time. Marco Rubio, who submitted his own immigration reform proposal, ended up voting against it. He voted against his own immigration reform bill. Why? It's because they're using immigration to win elections. And at the same time, they're exacerbating climate change, which will lead to more migration. Obviously, it's not the main goal here, right? The main goal is to enrich fossil fuel companies who happen to be major Republican vote donors, okay? But it all works together. You can see this, okay? Now, whether all of this is connected by design or coincidence that just ends up working in their favor, I can't exactly say. But what I can say is that this is effective. The more major storms and events that happen that devastate other countries as well as our own, right? The more fearful people are going to get, okay? And the more that desperate people attempt to escape from the poorer countries that cannot deal as effectively to those events like we can, the more fearful people here are going to become. And the more that happens, the more Republicans will be able to take advantage of that to fearmonger to people about scary immigrant caravans and they're eating the cats, they're eating the dogs, okay, to acquire more and more political power. That's how all of this is connected, how it all kind of comes together. And now this government is banning any effort to try to slow climate change, can't even talk about it, and are trying to make it worse. Look, bad times aren't just coming, they're already here, and because of the actions of this administration are likely to get worse. Buckle up. Okay. Last story here. And here we go. A Trump-supporting Wisconsin Republican who was running for the governorship of the state had dropped out last week after it was reported that he was following a number of explicit accounts online. Wisconsin businessman Bill Berrien, a former Navy SEAL and one of the 3 announced prominent Republican candidates, dropped out. In a lengthy statement, he said, "I had no idea that running for political office could be almost as dangerous as hunting down war criminals in Bosnia. Looking towards what is in the best interest of the party, voters, donors, and my family, I've decided to end my campaign." Now, look, I don't know about hunting down war criminals. I've never done it myself. But I'm pretty sure being outed as someone who may have a spank bank online might not be all that bad. Embarrassing, sure, but not all that bad. Unless you happen to be an anti-LGBTQ Republican that likes to jerk it to LGBTQ people. But that can't be the reason, right? No, it is. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Turns out Berrien had an account on medium.com where he had followed many people, including a non-binary sex worker named Jiz Lee and several other authors of sexually explicit essays. He also followed some publications that had dealt with exploring sexuality, including having relationships with multiple partners. Okay, look, I don't actually care. I don't actually care what you're into, as long as it's consensual and doesn't involve kids, obviously. But remember, Republicans do care a lot about that, apparently, because they seem to hate sex or sex habits they don't consider to be normal. Any sort of deviancy is not allowed, It is funny, though, that, they're so openly anti-LGBTQ, yet every time the RNC comes to town, Grindr ends up crashing. Weird. Weird how that works out. And so, look, they're hypocritical, okay? This guy ran as a supporter of traditional family values, okay? Which means he went after transgender people. And yet might end up being a chaser, okay? At least of the NBs, okay? That's not to say that this is the only issue that he may have had with Republican voters. Oh, no. Before supporting Trump, he did support former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley in the 2024 presidential primary, so maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. Maybe his Medium, follows or whatever subscriptions might just have been the final straw on all of this. I do think that the GOP could probably forgive this, honestly, if it was just the Medium stuff alone. But one thing that they apparently will not forgive is his previous reticence in supporting Donald Trump, even though in some cases they have already, also forgiven that. I think that right there, though, is the number one crime when it comes to the Republican Party. If you do not support your leader, then you're in trouble, right? Well, he did turn around and he did support Donald Trump. But I guess you add in this embarrassment, and well, there you go. I mean, in his resignation, in his, ending his campaign, he wanted to focus on the articles, okay? The Medium stuff, which again is a strange thing, especially since it could be very, very embarrassing, right? The Milwaukee Journal Sentinel first reported on this online activity on September 22nd, where he had defended his actions the next day to the Associated Press, saying that the media was just focused on stupid articles I read years ago, and had described those articles and the people he followed as being cherry-picked, and said that it painted a salacious and sensational picture that was clearly targeted to force me out of this governor race. It was a major attack piece. I'd never heard of this guy before all this stuff. If anything, this just got you more attention. And now here's what he said. And for what? He said, for reading. Nothing illegal, which is true. Nothing unethical, again, true. Nothing immoral, true. Just reading. Wouldn't you want your political and business leaders and all of society, frankly, to be widely read and thoughtful and aware of different perspectives and ideas? I don't know, man. It sounds kind of communist, you know what I'm saying?
Pink-haired communist.
We don't like that. No, it's funny because actually, again, I agree with his reasoning, Yes, I do want leaders like that. But apparently a lot of Republicans don't. Okay, there's a lot of Republicans out there that aren't exactly in favor of different perspectives or ideas. I'm not saying all of them. I'm just saying a lot of them. Okay, and the reading, again, a lot of them also don't like that unless it's the Bible, which a lot of them don't actually read. But again, this guy, I don't care what he reads, honestly. I don't care what's in his spank bank. Again, as long as it's not literal children, which we've seen a lot of Republicans get caught with, okay? And that's why I had to mention that. But no, I don't care. The fact is that this so-called scandal not only exposes him as a bit of a hypocrite with his anti-LGBTQ stances and yet following LGBTQ people, okay? But the hypocrisy doesn't really matter because no Republicans ever pay attention to it anyway, okay? But it does show you how Puritan a lot of these Republican voters are and how much they really want people who are only loyal, not to the Constitution, but to Donald Trump. And if you've shown disloyalty or have previously criticized him, well, unless you beg for forgiveness and prostrate yourself, in front of him at the altar of begging forgiveness, then apparently the party will excise you. Just saying. So that's what I think. And maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I guess we'll see. But at the end of the day, Bill Berrien, I guess now you do have a lot of time to go and browse Medium. So at least there's that. Okay. Let's see. The iHip News ladies need to have Jeff on as a guest. Who are those? Who are they again? Oh, is yeah, the I have had it podcast people. Oh yeah. I actually did email them the other day to see if they were interested. I haven't gotten a response yet, unfortunately. But yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd go on there. No, not a problem. So, I mean, I don't know if people want to do like a write-in campaign, where like, hey, why don't you, invite him as a guest? I think he'd be great. I wouldn't be opposed to that. Wouldn't be opposed. But yeah, I'm definitely familiar. So, yeah, would love to. It just my brain didn't connect that for a second. All right. Let's see. VMan 29397 with super chat here says, did you see MAGA throw a massive hissy fit when the NFL announced Bad Bunny as the NFL halftime show? Because God forbid we see a Latino artist who's critical of Trump, ICE, and the U.S. toxic relationship with Puerto Rico. I did see that that Bad Bunny, yes, was going to do the NFL halftime show. I didn't read any of the particular right-wing responses to it, but I'm not surprised. None of this is all that surprising. We're not. I'm not having Pikachu face over that one, but yeah. There's always got to be something to complain about, something to distract themselves with, all that stuff. So, yeah. Oh yeah, we'll comment and write in. All right, sweet. Yeah, would absolutely love to. And maybe I emailed the wrong. I don't know. But yeah, I would enjoy, being guesting on other shows, whether they be big or small, whatever, having conversations with like-minded people, perhaps some even small disagreements, but I can debate in good faith, and I think it'd be a lot of fun. So yeah, maybe in the future, that they'll I will be invited, because I always like being invited places, to have these conversations, and would love to do so. VMan 29397 also says, God forbid they learn music of a different culture. Here's one of the most ironic things. I knew a guy who was big, Republican, didn't like black people, but loved rap music. Wrap your head around that one, okay? Because I never could understand, like, wait a minute, you don't like black people, all right? You're very openly racist, and yet you listen to their music. You listen to rap music all the time. You're literally your favorite, or pretty much your favorite genre. That doesn't make any sense to me. So you just like, you like the culture, but you also hate the culture at the same time. It doesn't make any sense to me. Never makes any. Okay. Undown. I want to see more legit independent media coming together. Yeah. Yeah. I would also love to see that. And not the chorus stuff. Yeah. Well, chorus was different. I'm not sure how to explain chorus as other than what I have already talked about before on that, where it's like, it doesn't seem like it was one of those things where you're trying to bring independent media together, but more of like, funding certain narratives, I guess. But there you go. I don't. I guess I was just never comfortable with being paid, with the whole idea of people being paid $8,000 or up to $8,000 a month, when they're already a gigantic creator, but that's just me. Marielle Trump's another great one. Jeff, you seem like the kind of person that's the guy you can have a beer with and have a productive conversation and exchange ideas. And thank you. I do appreciate that, Betty. Betty Veronica 2.0. I actually, it's kind of funny because I was invited to have a debate. I think it was back in 2019. A right-wing group was inviting lefty creators to come and debate. And so I took them up on it. And there was somebody, and again, I don't know if it was somebody who's progressive, but they were familiar with my show. Somebody who's progressive or somebody who was conservatives or kind of middle of the road was like, I want to buy you a beer because I appreciate your perspective. And I was like, okay, awesome. And that was nice. And it was a good, debate, good conversation here. But yeah, I mean, it feels like those days are just kind of over these days because there's so much, I think, just animosity on both sides where, nobody really wants to talk and actually have conversations in good faith. Because I do know that there are some people who are conservative, some people who are Republican, who I don't agree with on pretty much most issues, that at least believe in the stuff that they're talking about and are willing to have a conversation. But, you don't really see that as far as in the media space anymore. So, yeah. That's the unfortunate thing. Because this media space likes it when people fight each other. And for me, again, if you're somebody who, it wants fair wages for workers, if you're somebody who wants, yes, the First Amendment, freedom, okay, freedom of speech, and you care about that, and you care about, hey, government censorship and all that stuff, that's great. That's great. We can agree on a lot of that stuff. We can agree on, hey, maybe the rich need to be taxed a lot more, because that's something that also some people on the right feel. Okay. And so, I can have conversations with people. I can have disagreements as well with people who think, oh, I think taxes on rich people are too high. Well, okay, we'll have a conversation. We'll disagree. And I'll show you facts, and you'll basically show me how much you love rich people and how much you want to be a rich person. But at least we can have a conversation on that, right? Nowadays, though, there's too many people where you can't have a conversation because they don't live in the same reality as you do. They don't live in the real world. They don't. They disagree on what color the sky is, almost, okay? And so you can't really have any productive conversations with those people. And that's, unfortunately, it feels like that's where we're at today. We're arguing with people who are like, no, the sky is green. It's turquoise, okay? No, it's blue. It's blue, for the most part, okay? Except, when the sun's up, or sun's going up, sun's going down, that kind of stuff. But generally, no, sky is, to our eyes, blue. And, if we're not, water is wet, okay? And if you're having conversations with people who don't believe in that and will argue to the hilt that that is not the case, then I don't think we're going to get anywhere. And it feels like it's just a waste of time. So, but anyway, there's an almost sociopathic urge on the internet to immediately try and tear people down, including people who are ostensibly friendly, if not mostly in agreement. You're absolutely correct. You are absolutely right about that. Darmok at Tanagra, which, by the way, love the TNG reference there. It's awesome. But you were absolutely correct on that one. And so, yeah, there's that. No, everything that water touches gets wet. Okay, now you're getting into science. Okay. You're getting, yeah, yes, technically, yes. But actually, when you think about it, when you really drill down into science, nothing actually ever touches anything, because what you get is the sensation of touch is actually the atoms repelling each other. Okay, so we can go down that rabbit hole. Okay. But generally, you see what I meant. JC Vastgood or Vascode. I see what you're doing there. Very entertaining. But anyway, look, we saw how well they did science during COVID. Yeah, true. True. Just shove a light bulb in your butt and everything will be all right. Right. Okay. Anyway, though, yeah. Try to have a good day. If you haven't already, please like and share the stream. Please consider becoming a supporter of the show. Patreon.com/jeffwaldorf. I guarantee that is not a what is it? A left-wing non-profit. Okay, that is fomenting terrorism. Okay, none of that. It's just to help pay the bills, keep the lights on. So, sign up for that or become a member by hitting the join button below. If you're on YouTube, or become a subscriber if you're on Facebook, and a supporter if you're on Twitch. All those different ways are how you can support the show. Very important that you do so. All right, everybody. Thank you. Try to have a good day, even after all this horrible information that I gave you. And take care of yourselves, your families, your communities, and remember, change begins with you. Good night, everybody.